You can write the problems you're facing or the kind of story you'd like to hear in the comments. You choose the topic, you choose the main character's name, and I'll turn it into a story you can share with the people you love. Please specify in the comments what topic and for whom you want it, and I will prepare it accordingly. Title: The Lighthouse Keeper's Seasons. Story summary: this is a peaceful sleep story about Marina, a lighthouse keeper who lives on a rocky coastal peninsula. Through the changing seasons, we follow her gentle daily routines, tending her garden, baking fresh bread, maintaining the lighthouse, and welcoming the occasional visitor. The story emphasizes the soothing rhythms of nature, the comfort of routine, and the beauty of a simple, mindful life by the sea. It's designed to help you relax and drift into peaceful sleep. The sound of waves lapping against the rocky shore below is the first thing Marina hears as she opens her eyes. The rhythm is steady and eternal, a heartbeat that has existed long before her time and will continue long after. She lies still for a moment, listening to the gentle whoosh and retreat of the water, letting it anchor her to this new day. Through the window beside her bed, pale morning light filters in, soft and gray. The sun hasn't fully risen yet, but the darkness of night has begun to fade, giving way to the gentle blues and silvers of dawn. Marina takes a deep breath, filling her lungs with the cool, salt-tinged air that seeps through the old wooden frames of the lighthouse keeper's cottage. She stretches her arms above her head, feeling her muscles awaken gradually. Her toes circle beneath the heavy quilts her grandmother made years ago, each stitch a labor of love in deep blues and seafoam greens. The weight of the blankets is comforting, and for just a few more moments, she allows herself to sink into their warmth. But there is work to be done. The lighthouse never sleeps, even if she does. Marina sits up slowly, swinging her legs over the side of the bed until her feet find the worn sheepskin slippers waiting on the wooden floor. The cottage is chilly this morning. Autumn has truly arrived, and she's grateful for the cozy warmth they provide. Standing, she walks to the window and looks out over the peninsula. Mist clings to the water, hovering just above the surface like a delicate veil. In the distance, she can barely make out the shapes of fishing boats heading out for the day's catch, their lights blinking like fireflies against the gray. The lighthouse stands tall behind the cottage, its white and red striped tower a beacon of safety and guidance. Marina smiles, thinking of all the ships it has guided home over the decades, all the lives it has potentially saved. It's an honor to be its keeper, she thinks, to be part of something so much larger than herself. She pulls her thick woolen robe from the hook on the back of her bedroom door and wraps it around herself, tying the sash snugly at her waist. Her first task of the morning, as always, is to make tea. Marina pads softly into the small kitchen, her slippers making a gentle shuffling sound on the wooden floorboards. The cottage is simple but cozy, with whitewashed walls and blue shutters, copper pots hanging from hooks, and herbs drying in bundles near the window. It smells of sea salt, dried lavender, and the faint wood smoke from last night's fire. She fills the copper kettle with fresh water from the tap and sets it on the stove. While she waits for it to boil, she walks to the pantry and selects her tea for the morning. She has quite a collection: gifts from visitors over the years, orders from the mainland, and blends she's created herself using the herbs from her garden. Today she chooses a blend of chamomile, lemon balm, and a touch of rosehip, something soothing and gentle to ease her into the day. She measures the dried herbs into a small muslin bag and places it in her favorite mug, a sturdy ceramic piece in deep ocean blue with a simple white wave painted around the rim. The kettle begins to whistle softly, and Marina pours the hot water over the tea bag, watching as the clear water slowly transforms into a pale golden amber. Steam rises in delicate curls, carrying with it the sweet, floral scent of chamomile. She adds a spoonful of honey from the local beekeeper on the mainland and stirs it gently, watching the thick, golden liquid spiral through the tea. Carrying her mug carefully, Marina walks to the window seat in the kitchen. This is her favorite spot in the whole cottage, a built-in bench with cushions covered in faded blue and white ticking stripe fabric. From here, she has a perfect view of the sea, the rocky shore, and the small garden she tends beside the cottage. She settles into the cushions and brings the warm mug to her lips, taking her first sip. The tea is perfect, sweet and soothing, warming her from the inside out. She closes her eyes for a moment and simply breathes, letting the warmth spread through her chest and down into her belly. When she opens her eyes again, she notices the mist is beginning to lift slightly. She can see more of the water now, the way it moves in gentle swells, rolling toward the shore in rhythmic patterns. A few seabirds have begun their morning routines, swooping and diving for their breakfast. In her garden, she can see her vegetables are still hanging on despite the cooling temperatures. The kale and chard are particularly hardy, their dark green leaves jeweled with morning dew. The tomatoes, however, have started to fade, their season coming to a natural end. She'll need to harvest the last of them today, she thinks, and perhaps make a batch of soup. Marina sips her tea slowly, savoring each moment of this quiet morning ritual. There's no rush. The lighthouse ran all night as it should have, and she'll check on it soon enough. But for now, she allows herself this time to simply be present, to notice the beauty around her, to feel grateful for this life she's chosen. Through the window, she watches as the first true rays of sunlight break through the clouds on the horizon. The light spreads across the water like liquid gold, transforming the gray sea into something magical and alive. This is why she loves mornings, Marina thinks. Every single one is different, and yet each contains this same sense of possibility and peace. She finishes the last of her tea and carries the mug to the sink, washing it carefully and setting it on the wooden drying rack. Then she makes her way back to the bedroom to dress for the day. Marina chooses practical clothes as always: thick canvas trousers, a soft cotton shirt, and a heavy knit sweater in cream wool. She pulls on warm socks and her sturdy leather boots, ones that can handle the rocky terrain and won't slip on wet surfaces. Finally, she braids her long dark hair and pins it up, keeping it out of the way for the work ahead. Before heading out, she wraps a thick scarf around her neck and pulls on her weathered oilskin jacket. The mornings are getting quite cold now, and she knows the wind off the water can have a bite to it. Marina steps out the front door of the cottage and pauses to take in the morning. The air is crisp and clean, filled with the scent of salt water and seaweed. She takes a deep breath, filling her lungs completely, and then exhales slowly, watching her breath form a small cloud in the cool air. The path from the cottage to the lighthouse is made of smooth stones, worn down over the years by countless footsteps. Marina has walked this path so many times she could do it with her eyes closed, but she never takes it for granted. Each step is mindful, each moment an opportunity to notice something new. Today she spots a small crab scuttling sideways across the path, making its way back to the tidipools. She pauses to let it pass, smiling at its determined little movements. "Good morning," she says softly, though she knows it can't hear her. The lighthouse looms before her, and she feels the familiar sense of pride and responsibility swell in her chest. She pulls out her large brass key and unlocks the heavy wooden door at the base of the tower. It swings open with a creak, revealing the stone spiral staircase within. Marina begins to climb. The stairs wind upward in a tight spiral, and she places her hand on the cool stone wall to steady herself as she goes. She's climbed these stairs thousands of times, and her legs know the rhythm well. Step after step after step, breathing steadily, moving upward toward the light. The walls of the lighthouse are thick stone, and as she climbs, she can hear the muffled sound of the wind outside. Small windows at intervals let in streaks of morning light, creating patterns on the stairs. Dust motes dance in the beams, and Marina watches them as she passes, mesmerized by their gentle floating motion. Finally, she reaches the top, slightly breathless but satisfied. The lamp room is circular with windows all around, offering a 360-degree view of the sea and coastline. The great Fresnel lens sits in the center, its prisms catching and reflecting the morning light in brilliant fragments of color. Marina walks around the lens, checking everything carefully. She examines the lamp to ensure it's functioning properly, checks the fuel levels, wipes away any dust or salt spray from the glass. Everything is in order as it should be. The lighthouse performed its duty throughout the night, keeping ships safe as they navigated the dark waters. From up here, the view is breathtaking. Marina walks to the windows and looks out over the sea. The mist has lifted now, and she can see for miles. The water stretches endlessly toward the horizon, meeting the sky in a line of soft blue. Closer to shore, she can see the rocks where seals sometimes sun themselves, though none are there this morning. To the north, she can see the small town on the mainland, its buildings looking like toys from this distance. Smoke rises from chimneys as people start their fires and prepare their breakfasts. To the south, the coastline curves away in a series of rocky cliffs and small beaches, wild and beautiful. Marina spends a few more minutes at the top of the lighthouse, simply standing and breathing and taking it all in. This moment of quiet observation is part of her daily ritual, and it never fails to ground her, to remind her of her place in the world. When she's satisfied that all is well, she makes her way back down the spiral stairs, her footsteps echoing softly in the stone chamber. At the bottom, she steps back outside and locks the door securely behind her. Now it's time for the garden. Marina walks to the small plot of land beside the cottage, where she's cultivated vegetables, herbs, and flowers over the years. The soil here is rocky and challenging, but she's learned to work with it, amending it with seaweed and compost, choosing plants that can thrive in the salty air and strong winds. She kneels down beside the tomato plants and begins to harvest the last fruits. Some are still slightly green, but she knows they won't ripen much more before the frost comes. That's all right, green tomatoes have their own uses. She places each one carefully in the woven basket she brought from the cottage. The kale and chard are beautiful, their leaves thick and healthy. She picks a few handfuls, enough for the next several days. There are also the last of the herbs, parsley, thyme, and sage. She'll dry these and store them for the winter months when fresh herbs are harder to come by. As she works, Marina's mind settles into a peaceful rhythm. There's something meditative about gardening, about working with your hands in the soil, about tending and nurturing living things. The earth smells rich and dark, and she can feel it crumbling between her fingers. A cool breeze picks up, carrying the scent of the sea. Marina pauses in her work and looks up at the sky. The clouds are moving quickly, pulled along by the wind. It will be a blustery day, she thinks, but that's nothing unusual for this time of year. When her basket is full, Marina carries it back to the cottage. She rinses the vegetables carefully at the sink, removing any clinging dirt or small insects. Then she spreads them out on a clean towel to dry. Looking at her harvest, she decides today is perfect for making soup. A big pot of tomato and vegetable soup that she can eat over the next few days, warming her from the inside as the weather grows colder. Marina pulls out her largest pot, a heavy cast iron one that once belonged to her mother. She sets it on the stove and pours in a good glug of olive oil, letting it heat until it shimmers. Then she begins to chop onions, garlic, carrots, celery. The rhythmic sound of the knife on the cutting board is soothing, and she takes her time, cutting each piece with care. When the oil is ready, she adds the onions and garlic, listening to the satisfying sizzle as they hit the hot surface. The smell is immediate and wonderful, filling the cottage with a warm, savory aroma. She stirs them gently with a wooden spoon, watching as they soften and become translucent. Next go the carrots and celery, and Marina adds a pinch of salt to help draw out their moisture. She stirs everything together, letting the vegetables cook slowly, building layers of flavor. This is one of her favorite parts of cooking, the patience it requires, the attention to each step. While the vegetables soften, Marina begins preparing the tomatoes. She cuts them into quarters, removing the cores and any blemished spots. Even the green ones go in, they'll add a nice tang to the soup. When they're all cut, she adds them to the pot along with some fresh thyme from the garden and a bay leaf. She pours in water until the vegetables are just covered, then adds another pinch of salt and a grind of black pepper. The soup needs to simmer for a while, so Marina covers the pot and turns the heat down low. It will bubble away gently, the flavors melding together, while she attends to other tasks. There's always something to do around the lighthouse and cottage. Today, Marina decides to tackle some mending. She retrieves her sewing basket from the cupboard and settles into the comfortable armchair by the fireplace. The basket contains several items that need her attention. A tear in her favorite work shirt, a loose button on her coat, and a small hole in one of her wool socks. She threads a needle with practiced ease and begins with the sock, using tiny, careful stitches to darn the hole. As she sews, Marina lets her mind wander. She thinks about the upcoming winter, about the supplies she'll need to stock up on before the weather makes trips to the mainland more difficult. She'll need flour, sugar, dried beans, candles, lamp oil, and perhaps some new books to read during the long, dark evenings. She thinks about the ships that will pass by during the winter months, battling rough seas and howling winds. She feels the weight of her responsibility to them, to keep the lighthouse burning bright no matter what. It's not just a job to her. It's a calling, a duty she takes seriously. The sound of the soup bubbling gently on the stove mingles with the crackling fire she's built in the hearth. Marina finishes mending the sock and moves on to the button on her coat. The needle moves in and out, pulling the thread through the fabric in a steady rhythm that matches her breathing. Outside, she can hear the wind picking up even more. It whistles around the corners of the cottage and rattles the windows slightly. But inside, everything is warm and cozy. The cottage feels like a haven, a safe harbor in a sometimes stormy world. After a while, Marina sets aside her mending and goes to check on the soup. She lifts the lid and is greeted by a cloud of fragrant steam. The tomatoes have broken down, creating a rich red broth, and the vegetables are tender. She tastes it carefully, blowing on the spoon first to cool it. Perfect. The soup is rich and savory, with just the right balance of sweetness from the tomatoes and earthiness from the herbs. Marina smiles, pleased with her work. She turns off the heat and lets the soup cool slightly before ladling some into a bowl for her lunch. She carries her bowl to the table by the window and sits down. The soup is delicious, warming her thoroughly with each spoonful. She eats slowly, savoring each bite, watching the waves roll in through the window as she does. After lunch, Marina cleans up the kitchen, washing her bowl and spoon and wiping down the counters. The rest of the soup she'll save for later, letting it cool completely before storing it in jars in the cold pantry. The afternoon stretches ahead of her, and Marina decides to take a walk along the shore. She pulls on her jacket and boots once more and heads out into the blustery day. The wind is strong now, pulling at her clothes and hair. She keeps her head down slightly as she makes her way down the rocky path to the beach. The sound of the waves is louder here, crashing against the rocks with a force that sends spray into the air. Marina walks along the tidal-line, careful to keep her balance on the slippery rocks. She's searching for treasures, pieces of sea glass worn smooth by the waves, interesting shells, bits of driftwood she can use for her small woodworking projects. Today she finds several pieces of blue and green sea glass, their edges perfectly rounded. She slips them into her pocket, already imagining how she might arrange them in the window where they can catch the light. There's also a beautiful piece of driftwood, shaped by the water into a smooth, curving form. She picks it up, feeling its weight and texture in her hands. As she walks, Marina notices a seal in the water not far from shore. Its dark head bobs above the waves, and she's almost certain it's watching her. She stands still, not wanting to frighten it, and they regard each other for a long moment. Then, with a splash of its tail, the seal dives beneath the surface and disappears. Marina continues her walk, breathing in the fresh sea air, feeling the wind on her face, listening to the eternal song of the waves. This is her meditation, her therapy, her church. Being here in nature, connected to the sea and the sky and the land. This is what makes her feel whole. By the time she returns to the cottage, the sun is beginning to lower toward the horizon. The days are getting shorter now, and soon it will be dark by late afternoon. But for now, there's still light, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. Marina builds up the fire in the hearth and settles into her armchair with a book. She's reading a novel about a woman who sails around the world alone, and she finds it both thrilling and soothing. She reads for a while, losing herself in the story, the fire crackling beside her. As evening approaches, Marina knows it's time to light the lighthouse lamp. She makes her way back to the tower and climbs the spiral stairs once more. At the top, she follows the familiar routine, checking the fuel, adjusting the settings, ensuring everything is perfect. Then she lights the lamp. The flame catches, small at first, then growing stronger. The Fresnel lens captures the light and magnifies it, sending it out across the dark water in a sweeping beam. Round and round it goes, a constant guardian in the night. Marina watches the light for a few moments, feeling satisfied. Another day, another night of keeping ships safe. It never gets old, this moment of lighting the lamp. It feels sacred somehow, important. She descends the stairs and returns to the cottage. It's time for a simple dinner. She heats up more of the soup and eats it with thick slices of bread she baked 2 days ago. The meal is simple but nourishing, exactly what she needs. After dinner, Marina washes up and then sits by the fire once more. She takes out her knitting. She's working on a new sweater in cream-colored wool. The needles click rhythmically as she works, row after row, the pattern emerging slowly from the yarn. Through the window, she can see the light from the lighthouse sweeping across the darkness. It's a comforting sight, knowing it's there, keeping watch. She can also see stars beginning to appear in the clear patches between clouds, twinkling like tiny lights suspended in the vast darkness. Marina knits until her eyes grow heavy. She sets aside her work and banks the fire, making sure it's safe for the night. Then she changes into her nightgown and climbs into bed, pulling the heavy quilts up to her chin. As she lies in the darkness, she can hear the waves outside, their rhythm unchanged. She can hear the wind moving around the cottage. And far above, she knows the lighthouse is burning bright, its light cutting through the darkness. Marina closes her eyes and takes a deep breath. She feels grateful for this place, for this life, for the simple routines that give her days structure and meaning. She feels at peace, knowing she is exactly where she's supposed to be. Sleep comes easily, pulling her gently down into its soft embrace. And as she dreams, the lighthouse keeps watch above, faithful and true, guiding ships safely through the night. The next morning begins much the same. Marina wakes to the sound of the waves, stretches beneath her quilts, and makes her way to the kitchen for tea. But today, she notices something different. Frost on the windows, delicate patterns of ice crystals catching the early light. Winter is coming. She makes her tea. Today, she chooses a black tea with hints of orange and cinnamon, something warming and spicy. She settles into her window seat and watches as the sun rises, turning the frost into diamonds that sparkle and glint. In the garden, the last of the vegetables are surely finished now, touched by the frost. She'll need to clear out the beds and prepare them for their winter rest. But there's no hurry. Marina has learned the importance of working with the seasons, not against them. After her tea, she dresses warmly and makes her way to the lighthouse. The climb is the same as always, but somehow it feels extra special on this crisp morning. At the top, she extinguishes the lamp now that daylight has come and checks all the equipment as usual. From the windows, she can see the frost has touched everything. The rocks, the grass, even the very edge of the water seems rimmed with ice. It's beautiful in its own stark way, this transition between seasons. Marina spends the morning doing small tasks around the cottage, organizing her supplies, checking her stores of food and fuel, writing a list of things she'll need from the mainland. When she has a free afternoon later in the week, she'll take the small boat across the channel to the town and stock up on necessities. For lunch, she makes herself a simple meal of cheese and bread with pickled vegetables she preserved last summer. The sharp, tangy flavor of the pickles is delicious, a reminder of warmer days. In the afternoon, a visitor arrives, Captain Tom from one of the fishing boats. He often stops by to check on Marina and bring her fresh fish from his catch. Today he has mackerel, their silver scales still gleaming. "Thought you might like these," he says with a smile, handing her the fish wrapped in paper. "Thank you, Tom," Marina says warmly. "Would you like to come in for tea?" They sit at her table and drink tea together, catching up on news from the town. Tom tells her about his grandchildren, about the fishing season, about the upcoming winter preparations. Marina listens, enjoying the company and the conversation. When Tom leaves, Marina sets about preparing the mackerel. She cleans them carefully at the sink, then seasons them with salt, pepper, lemon, and fresh thyme. She'll bake them in the oven for her dinner tonight. As the fish cooks, filling the cottage with its savory aroma, Marina returns to her knitting. The sweater is coming along nicely, and she hopes to have it finished before the coldest part of winter arrives. She thinks about how lucky she is to have this life. Yes, it can be lonely sometimes. Yes, the winters can be harsh and challenging. But there's a deep satisfaction in her work, in the rhythm of her days, in the connection she feels to this place and the sea. The lighthouse is more than just a building to her. It's a partner, a companion. She cares for it, and in turn, it gives her purpose and meaning. Together, they keep watch over these waters, providing safety and guidance to those who need it. When the fish is done, Marina plates it alongside some roasted potatoes and the last of her garden greens. She eats her dinner slowly, savoring each bite, grateful for the fresh food and the warmth of her cottage. After dinner, she sits by the fire and reads for a while. The book is getting quite exciting now, and she has trouble putting it down. But eventually, she marks her place and sets it aside. It's time to light the lighthouse lamp once more. Marina makes the climb up the spiral stairs, lights the lamp, and watches as the beam begins its endless rotation. Then she returns to the cottage and prepares for bed. As she lies beneath her quilts, listening to the familiar sounds of the night, the waves, the wind, the occasional call of a seabird, Marina feels completely content. This is her life, and she wouldn't trade it for anything. She closes her eyes and lets sleep come, drifting off into peaceful dreams of the sea. Days turn into weeks, and the season continues its slow march toward winter. Each morning, Marina follows her routine, tea by the window, checking the lighthouse, tending to whatever tasks the day requires. She finds comfort in the repetition, in the predictable rhythm of her days. Some days are stormy, with fierce winds and driving rain. On those days, Marina stays mostly inside, keeping the fire burning, working on her knitting or her wood carving, or simply reading by the window. She checks the lighthouse more frequently during storms, making sure everything is functioning properly. Other days are clear and cold, with brilliant blue skies and air so crisp it almost hurts to breathe. On those days, Marina bundles up and goes for long walks along the shore, collecting more sea glass and interesting shells, watching the seals and seabirds. She makes bread every few days, kneading the dough with strong, practiced hands, shaping it into loaves that bake up golden and delicious. The smell of fresh bread fills the cottage, making it feel even more like home. She makes soups and stews that simmer on the stove for hours, filling the air with savory aromas. She roasts vegetables until they're caramelized and sweet. She fries fish in butter until it's crispy on the outside and flaky on the inside. She reads books and writes letters to friends. She knits and sews and carves small objects from driftwood. She tends the fire and keeps the cottage clean and organized. And every evening, without fail, she climbs the lighthouse stairs and lights the lamp, sending its beam out across the dark water. This is her life, and it is a good life. It's a life of solitude, yes, but not loneliness. She has the sea for company, and the lighthouse, and the occasional visitors from the mainland. She has her routines and her rituals, her small comforts and simple pleasures. Marina has learned to find joy in the smallest things. The first sip of morning tea, the warmth of the fire on a cold day, the sight of a seal in the water, the satisfaction of a well-made loaf of bread. These are the moments that make up a life, she thinks. Not the grand gestures or dramatic events, but the quiet, everyday miracles. As winter settles in fully, the days grow shorter and the nights longer. Snow begins to fall occasionally, dusting the rocks and grass with white. The sea grows rougher, more temperamental, but the lighthouse stands firm, its beam cutting through the darkness and the storms. Marina settles into the winter rhythm, knowing that spring will come again eventually. The seasons turn, the world changes, but some things remain constant. The waves, the lighthouse, the simple satisfaction of a life well lived. And so she continues, day after day, night after night, keeping watch over the sea, tending her small corner of the world, finding peace and purpose in the rhythm of the lighthouse keeper's life. The waves roll in. The lighthouse beam sweeps round. Marina tends the flame, and all is well. The Lighthouse Keeper's Seasons Part 2. Winter's Deep Embrace. The morning arrives slowly, as winter mornings often do. The sky remains dark long after Marina opens her eyes, and she lies still for a moment, listening. The sound is different today, muffled, quieter. Even the waves seem distant and soft. Snow. Marina sits up and looks toward the window. Sure enough, thick flakes are falling steadily, accumulating on the windowsill and transforming the world outside into a soft white landscape. Everything is covered, the rocks, the path, the garden beds, even the lighthouse tower in the distance stands draped in white. She smiles, feeling a childlike wonder rise up in her chest. No matter how many winters she's lived through, there's something magical about waking up to snow. It makes the world feel new and clean, like a blank page waiting to be written on. Marina slides her feet into her slippers and wraps her robe around herself. The cottage is colder this morning, and she can see her breath forming small clouds in the air. The fire in the hearth has burned down to embers overnight, so her first task will be to build it back up. She makes her way to the fireplace and kneels down on the worn rug. The embers glow faintly, still holding some heat. Marina adds small pieces of kindling first, arranging them carefully over the glowing coals. She blows gently, encouraging the fire to catch. A small flame licks up, then another, and soon the kindling is crackling merrily. She adds larger pieces of wood, watching as the fire grows stronger. The warmth begins to spread, pushing back the cold. Marina holds her hands out toward the flames, feeling the heat on her palms. This is one of life's great pleasures, she thinks, warming yourself by a fire on a cold winter morning. Once the fire is burning well, Marina makes her way to the kitchen to prepare her morning tea. Today she chooses a blend of chai spices, cinnamon, cardamom, ginger, and black tea, something warming and spicy for a snowy day. She fills the kettle and sets it on the stove, then measures the tea into a small pot. When the water boils, she pours it over the tea and lets it steep, filling the cottage with its aromatic fragrance. The scent alone is warming, bringing to mind images of distant lands and spice markets. Marina adds milk and honey to her cup, stirring slowly, watching the swirls of cream blend with the dark tea. She carries it to her window seat, but today the view is almost entirely white. The snow is still falling steadily, and she can barely see past the garden. The lighthouse is just a faint shape in the distance, a ghostly presence in the swirling white. She sips her tea slowly, feeling the spices warm her from the inside. The heat of the cup seeps into her hands, and she holds it close, grateful for its comfort. Outside, the world is wild and wintry, but here inside the cottage, she is safe and warm and content. Marina knows she'll need to check the lighthouse soon, storm or no storm. But for now, she allows herself a few more minutes of peaceful sitting, watching the snow fall, letting the tea work its warming magic. When her cup is empty, she washes it and sets it to dry. Then she returns to her bedroom to dress in her warmest clothes, thick wool socks, flannel-lined trousers, a heavy knit sweater, and an extra layer underneath. She pulls on her warmest coat, wraps her scarf around her neck several times, and puts on her thick mittens. Before she heads out, Marina looks around the cottage to make sure everything is secure. The fire is burning well, the stove is off, the windows are closed tight. She takes a deep breath, preparing herself for the cold, and opens the front door. The wind hits her immediately, cold and sharp, carrying snow that stings her cheeks. Marina pulls the door closed behind her and steps out onto the path. The snow is already several inches deep, and her boots sink into it with each step. She can barely see where she's going, but her feet know the way. She's walked this path in all kinds of weather, and even in a snowstorm, she can find her way to the lighthouse. The wind pushes against her, trying to turn her back, but she presses forward, head down, one foot in front of the other. The cold is intense, finding its way through every gap in her clothing. Her face feels numb, and snow catches in her eyelashes. But Marina doesn't mind. There's something exhilarating about being out in weather like this, about testing yourself against the elements and finding that you're strong enough. Finally, the lighthouse looms before her, a solid presence in the whirling snow. Marina pulls out her key with numb fingers and fits it into the lock. Takes a moment. The cold has made everything stiff, but finally the door opens and she steps inside. The lighthouse interior is marginally warmer, protected from the wind at least. Marina stands still for a moment, catching her breath, letting her eyes adjust to the dimness. Snow has blown in through cracks around the door, creating little drifts on the stone floor. She begins to climb the spiral stairs, her legs working steadily. The climb warms her up a bit, gets her blood flowing. Up and up and up, round and round, until finally she reaches the lamp room at the top. Everything looks good. The lamp is still burning bright, its beam cutting through the storm. Marina checks the fuel level, examines the lens for any frost or condensation, wipes away a bit of moisture from one of the windows. All is well. The lighthouse is doing its job, keeping watch even in the worst weather. From up here, the view is otherworldly. Nothing but white in every direction. Sky and sea and land all blended together in one vast whiteness. The snow swirls and dances, moved by the wind into patterns that shift and change moment by moment. Marina stands at the window for a while, mesmerized by the snow. There's something hypnotic about it, the way it moves, the way it transforms everything it touches. She thinks about ships out on the water, struggling through the storm, and she's grateful that her lighthouse is here, burning bright, giving them something to aim for. When she's satisfied that everything is functioning properly, Marina makes her way back down the stairs. The descent is always easier than the climb, and soon she's back at the bottom, pushing open the heavy door. The storm has intensified. The wind is howling now, and the snow is coming down so thick that Marina can barely see her hand in front of her face. For a moment, she hesitates. Should she wait it out here in the lighthouse? But no. She needs to get back to the cottage while she still can. If the storm gets any worse, she might not be able to make it. Marina pulls her scarf up over her nose and mouth and steps out into the blizzard. The cold is shocking, even more intense than before. The wind tears at her clothes, and the snow pelts her like tiny frozen bullets. She can't see the path at all now, but she knows it's there beneath her feet. She moves slowly, carefully, feeling her way forward. One step at a time. She counts her steps in her head, trying to estimate how far she's come. The wind pushes her sideways, and she has to fight to stay on course. Snow gets inside her collar despite the scarf, melting against her skin in icy trickles. Just when Marina is beginning to worry that she's gotten turned around, that she's lost her way, she sees a faint glow ahead. The cottage windows, the fire burning inside. Relief floods through her, giving her renewed strength. She pushes forward, and suddenly she's at the door, fumbling with numb fingers for the handle. The door opens and Marina practically falls inside, slamming it shut behind her against the howling wind. She leans against it for a moment, breathing hard, feeling the warmth of the cottage envelope her like a blanket. Slowly, she peels off her outer layers. Her coat is covered in snow, her mittens are soaked through, and her scarf is stiff with ice. She hangs everything near the fire to dry, then stands close to the flames, letting the heat thaw her frozen fingers and toes. When she's warmed up enough to move properly again, Marina makes herself a cup of hot chocolate. She heats milk in a pan, adds cocoa powder and sugar, and whisks it until it's smooth and frothy. She pours it into a large mug and carries it to her armchair by the fire. The hot chocolate is rich and sweet and warming. Marina sips it slowly, feeling life return to her body. Outside, the storm rages on, but here inside she is safe and warm. This is the reality of living in a lighthouse. Sometimes you have to venture out into dangerous weather, but there's always the comfort of home to return to. Marina spends the rest of the day inside. She adds more wood to the fire regularly, keeping the cottage warm. She makes herself a hearty lunch of soup and bread, food that warms and sustains. She reads her book, losing herself in someone else's adventures for a while. In the afternoon, the storm finally begins to ease. The wind dies down, and the snow falls more gently. Marina watches through the window as the world slowly becomes visible again. Everything is transformed, covered in a thick blanket of white. By evening, the snow has stopped completely. The clouds begin to break up, and stars appear in the dark spaces between them. Marina knows she'll need to make another trip to the lighthouse soon to check on the lamp, but for now she simply sits and watches the peaceful scene outside. The snow-covered landscape glows softly in the starlight. It's beautiful, Marina thinks. The way winter transforms everything. Harsh and challenging, yes, but beautiful too. A visitor in the snow. The next morning dawns clear and brilliantly bright. Marina wakes to sunlight streaming through her window, reflecting off the snow outside with such intensity that she has to squint. She sits up, blinking, and looks out at a world transformed. Everything is white and sparkling, as though covered in diamonds. The snow has drifted into fantastic shapes, curves and swirls and peaks. The lighthouse stands proud against the blue sky, its red and white stripes standing out vividly against all the whiteness. Marina makes her morning tea, today a simple black tea with just a splash of milk, and sits at her window seat to take it all in. The beauty is almost overwhelming. She feels grateful to be here, to witness this, to be part of this wild and beautiful place. After her tea, she dresses warmly and heads outside. The air is cold and crisp, and her breath forms clouds that hang in the still air. The sun is bright but provides little warmth. Marina begins the work of clearing a path from her cottage to the lighthouse. She retrieves her shovel from the small shed and begins to dig. The snow is deep, and the work is hard, but Marina finds a rhythm. Scoop, lift, throw. Scoop, lift, throw. Her muscles warm up with the exertion, and soon she's removed her coat despite the cold. The work is meditative in its way, requiring enough focus that her mind can't wander too far. She's aware of her breathing, of the movement of her body, of the satisfying crunch of the shovel breaking through the snow. Slowly, steadily, a path emerges. She's halfway to the lighthouse when she hears a sound in the distance. Marina pauses, leaning on her shovel, and listens. There it is again, a motor, a boat. She looks out toward the water and sees a small fishing boat making its way through the channel. It's moving slowly, carefully navigating around chunks of ice that have formed near the shore. Marina recognizes the boat. It's Captain Tom's. The boat pulls up to the small dock below the lighthouse, and Marina makes her way down the rocky path, now partially cleared of snow. Tom is tying up the boat when she arrives, and he looks up with a smile. "Morning, Marina," he calls out. "Thought I'd better check on you after that storm. Brought you some supplies too." "Tom, you didn't have to do that," Marina says, but she's touched by his thoughtfulness. "Come up to the cottage. I'll make coffee." Tom shoulders a large pack and follows Marina up the path. In the cottage, he sets the pack down on the table while Marina makes coffee. Inside the pack are fresh bread, eggs, butter, and several pieces of smoked fish. "Nancy sent the bread," Tom says, referring to his wife. "She said she was worried about you being up here all alone in the storm." "That's very kind of her," Marina says warmly. "And you making the trip in this weather. The water must be difficult." It was a bit rough," Tom admits. "But I've been sailing these waters for 40 years. I know them well." They sit at the table with their coffee, and Tom tells her news from the town. His daughter is expecting a baby. His grandson caught his first fish last week. The new schoolteacher is settling in well. Marina listens, enjoying the connection to the wider community. "Do you ever get lonely up here?" Tom asks, not for the first time. Marina considers the question, as she always does. "Sometimes," she admits, "but not often. I have the lighthouse, the sea, my routines, and visits from friends like you." Tom nods, understanding. He's a man who loves the sea himself, who understands the pull of solitude and the satisfaction of a job well done. When Tom leaves, Marina feels warmed by more than just the coffee. She's reminded that even though she lives alone, she's not isolated. She's part of a community, connected by invisible threads to the people in town who care about her. She spends the afternoon using the fresh ingredients Tom brought. She makes scrambled eggs for lunch, soft and creamy, and eats them with thick slices of Nancy's bread toasted over the fire. For dinner, she'll cook the smoked fish with some of her preserved vegetables. As evening approaches, Marina makes her way to the lighthouse to check the lamp. The path she cleared this morning is already drifting over in places. The wind has picked up again, moving the snow around in swirling patterns. She'll need to clear it again tomorrow. At the top of the lighthouse, she tends to the lamp, checking everything carefully. The sun is setting, painting the snow-covered landscape in shades of pink and orange. The sea, visible now that the storm has passed, is a deep blue-gray, moving in heavy swells. Marina lights the lamp and watches as its beam begins to sweep across the darkening landscape. Another night, another vigil. She never tires of this moment, this transition from day to night, from relying on the sun to providing their own light. Back in the cottage, she cooks her dinner and eats by the fire. The fish is delicious, smoky and rich, and the preserved vegetables provide a nice contrast. After dinner, she works on her knitting for a while, then reads a few chapters of her book. As she prepares for bed, Marina realizes she feels more connected today than she has in a while. Tom's visit reminded her that she's not alone in the world, that people care about her, think about her, make sure she's all right. It's a good feeling, she thinks as she climbs into bed, to be independent and capable, but also to be part of a community, to be both solitary and connected. She falls asleep quickly, lulled by the familiar sounds of the night, the wind moving around the cottage, the distant sound of waves, and far above, the lighthouse keeping its faithful watch. The art of winter days. The winter settles into a pattern. Marina wakes each morning in the dark, makes her tea, checks the lighthouse. She shovels snow when it falls, tends the fire, cooks her meals. The days are short, the nights long, but she finds contentment in the rhythm. One particularly cold morning, Marina decides to spend the day on a project she's been thinking about for a while. She's collected so much sea glass over the years, pieces in shades of blue and green and white, all worn smooth by the waves. She wants to create something beautiful with them. She spreads her collection out on the kitchen table, sorting the pieces by color and size. There are hundreds of them, each one unique, each one a small treasure. Marina runs her fingers over them, feeling their smooth surfaces, admiring the way the light shines through them. She decides to make a window hanging, something that will catch the light and transform it into color. She gets out her tools, a small drill, some copper wire, pieces of driftwood she's already sanded smooth. She works slowly and carefully, drilling tiny holes in each piece of glass, threading the wire through, creating strands of color. The work is painstaking but satisfying. Marina loses track of time, completely absorbed in the creative process. She arranges and rearranges the pieces, trying different combinations, stepping back to see how they look, making adjustments. Hours pass. The fire burns low and she builds it up again. She makes herself lunch and eats it quickly, eager to get back to her project. The winter light moves across the table, illuminating her work in different ways as the day progresses. By late afternoon, the hanging is complete. Marina holds it up, and even in the dim winter light, it's beautiful. The pieces of glass dangle at different lengths, creating a waterfall effect. The blues and greens remind her of the sea, of waves and depths and mysterious underwater worlds. She hangs it in the kitchen window, where it will catch the morning light. Already she can imagine how it will look when the sun shines through it, casting colored shadows across the room. The thought makes her smile. Marina sits down in her armchair, feeling pleasantly tired. There's something deeply satisfying about making something with your own hands, about taking raw materials and transforming them into something beautiful. It's not unlike what she does with baking, she realizes, taking flour and water and yeast and creating bread, taking disparate elements and combining them into something greater than the sum of their parts. For dinner, she makes herself a simple stew, potatoes, carrots, onions, and some of the salted beef she keeps in the cold pantry. She lets it simmer on the stove while she tidies up the mess from her project, putting away tools and sweeping up small fragments of glass. The stew is ready by the time she's finished cleaning, and she ladles herself a bowl. The vegetables are soft and tender, and the broth is rich and flavorful. She eats slowly, savoring each bite, feeling nourished not just by the food, but by the satisfaction of a productive day. After dinner, Marina lights the lighthouse lamp and then returns to her cottage. She's tired in a good way, the kind of tiredness that comes from meaningful work. She prepares for bed early, sliding between the cool sheets and pulling the quilts up to her chin. As she drifts off to sleep, she thinks about the sea glass hanging in her window. Tomorrow morning, when the sun rises, it will catch the light and sparkle. It will be a small moment of beauty, a tiny bit of magic to start the day. And isn't that what life is made of? Really? These small moments, these tiny bits of beauty and magic scattered throughout our days. Not the grand gestures, but the quiet satisfactions. A project completed, a meal cooked, a job well done. Marina sleeps deeply, dreaming of colored light and smooth glass and the endless, eternal sea. Letters by firelight. Another week passes. The snow continues to fall intermittently, adding to what's already on the ground. Marina's world shrinks in the winter. Just the cottage, the lighthouse, the path between them. But it doesn't feel small. There's enough here to fill her days, to keep her engaged and content. One evening, Marina decides to write letters. She has friends and family scattered across the country, people she doesn't see often but likes to stay in touch with. In the winter, when travel is difficult and visitors are rare, letters become even more important. She settles at the kitchen table with her writing supplies, paper, envelopes, a fountain pen, and a bottle of deep blue ink. The fire crackles in the hearth, providing light and warmth. Outside, snow falls gently, visible in the light from the window. Marina begins with a letter to her sister, who lives in the city far to the south. She writes about her days, about the winter weather, about the sea glass window hanging she made. She asks about her sister's life, her nieces and nephews, the busy urban world that feels so far away from this quiet peninsula. Writing by hand is a slow process, but Marina finds it meditative. She watches the ink flow from the pen, forming letters and words and sentences. She takes her time, choosing her words carefully, trying to convey not just the facts of her life but the feeling of it. The peace, the satisfaction, the simple contentment she's found here. When the letter to her sister is finished, Marina writes to a friend from her childhood, someone she grew up with but hasn't seen in years. They still exchange letters regularly, chronicling their very different lives. Her friend has a large family and a busy social life, while Marina has solitude and the sea. And yet they understand each other, these two women who've chosen such different paths. Marina writes about the storm, about Tom's visit, about the long winter evenings spent reading and knitting. She writes about the seals she saw last week, bobbing in the icy water, and the way the snow transforms the lighthouse into something from a fairy tale. The pen moves across the paper, and the fire burns low. Marina pauses to add more wood, then returns to her letters. She writes to an old teacher who encouraged her love of books and learning. She writes to a cousin who shares her interest in nature and solitude. Each letter is a small work of art, a carefully crafted message sent out into the world. Marina knows these letters will travel far, carried by boat to the mainland, then by train or truck to distant cities and towns. They'll arrive in mailboxes and be opened by hands that haven't touched hers in years, read by eyes that light up with recognition and affection. By the time she's finished, Marina has written 5 letters. Her hand is cramped, and the fire has burned down again. She carefully addresses each envelope, affixes stamps, and sets them aside to mail the next time she makes it to town. Standing and stretching, Marina realizes how late it's gotten. The lighthouse lamp has been burning for hours now, and it's time for her to sleep. But first, she makes herself a cup of chamomile tea and sits one more time at the window. The snow has stopped, and stars are visible in the clear patches between clouds. The lighthouse beam sweeps round and round, constant and reassuring. Marina sips her tea and feels grateful for her life, for this place, for the connections she maintains even across great distances. Letter writing is an act of hope, she thinks. You send your words out into the world, trusting they'll reach their destination, trusting the recipient will understand what you mean, trusting the connection will remain strong despite time and distance. It's not unlike what she does with the lighthouse, really. Sending light out into the darkness, trusting it will guide someone safely home. Marina finishes her tea and prepares for bed. As she lies in the darkness, she imagines her letters on their journey, moving across water and land, passed from hand to hand, until finally they arrive where they're meant to be. The first thaw. Weeks pass in their gentle rhythm. The winter is long, as Marina knew it would be, but she doesn't mind. She has her routines, her projects, her books. The lighthouse keeps watch, and she keeps watch over the lighthouse. It's enough. And then one morning, Marina wakes to a different sound. Not the muffled quiet of snow, but something else, dripping. Water dripping from the eaves, snow melting in the sun. She sits up quickly and looks toward the window. Bright sunlight is streaming in, stronger and warmer than it's been in months. The icicles hanging from the roof edge are melting, sending drops of water cascading down. The first thaw. Marina gets out of bed and walks to the window. The snow is still deep, but she can see patches of brown earth showing through where the sun hits directly. The sky is brilliantly blue, without a single cloud. The sea, visible in the distance, looks almost cheerful, its waves catching the light and sparkling. Something in Marina's chest lifts. She hadn't realized how much she was waiting for this. This first sign that winter wouldn't last forever, that spring was coming, that the world would turn green again. She makes her tea with extra joy this morning, humming to herself as she works. She chooses a lighter blend than she's been drinking, a green tea with jasmine flowers. Tastes like hope, like new beginnings. At her window seat, Marina watches the melting snow with fascination. She can hear it everywhere, dripping from the roof, running in little rivulets down the rocks, trickling and flowing back toward the sea. The sound is musical, a symphony of water. After breakfast, Marina dresses and heads outside. The air is still cold, but there's a different quality to it. She can smell earth and stone underneath the snow, a hint of the living world beneath winter's blanket. She walks down to the shore, careful on the slippery rocks. Ice still clings to the edges of the tidipools, but she can see the water moving beneath it. Small patches of brown seaweed have become visible, swaying in the current. Marina stands at the water's edge and breathes deeply. The sea air smells fresh and clean, washed by the winter storms. She feels renewed, ready for whatever comes next. Back at the cottage, she spends the day in a flurry of activity. She opens all the windows to air out the rooms, even though it's cold. She washes her bedding and hangs it to dry in the bright sunlight. She organizes her pantry, taking stock of what she has left and what she'll need to replenish. She bakes bread, letting the yeasty smell fill the cottage. She makes a large pot of vegetable soup, using the last of her preserved tomatoes from last summer. She cleans and tidies, swept up by the energy of the thaw. By evening, Marina is pleasantly exhausted. The cottage feels fresh and renewed, and so does she. She eats her dinner of soup and fresh bread, then settles by the fire with her knitting. The sweater she's been working on all winter is nearly complete. Just a few more rows and it will be finished. Marina works steadily, her needles clicking in the quiet room. The fire crackles and pops, and outside, the sound of melting snow continues. When the sweater is finally done, Marina holds it up to admire. It's beautiful cream-colored wool, soft and warm, with a simple cable pattern up the front. She tries it on and is pleased to find it fits perfectly. She wears it to bed that night, enjoying the softness against her skin. As she drifts off to sleep, she thinks about the changing seasons, about the way winter gives way to spring, about the eternal cycle of death and rebirth that governs all of life. The lighthouse beam sweeps round through the darkness. The snow continues to melt, and Marina sleeps peacefully, wrapped in the fruits of her winter labor, waiting for spring to arrive, planning for spring. The thaw continues over the next few days. More and more patches of earth become visible, and the snow retreats to shaded areas where the sun can't reach. Marina watches the transformation with growing excitement. One afternoon, she sits at her kitchen table with a notebook and pencil, planning her spring garden. What should she plant this year? More tomatoes, certainly. They did well last summer. Lettuce and spinach, cucumbers and beans. Maybe she'll try something new too. Pumpkins perhaps, or melons. She sketches out a rough layout of the garden, dividing it into sections for different crops. She makes lists of seeds she'll need to order, supplies she'll need to buy. Planning the garden is almost as enjoyable as actually working in it, she thinks. It's full of possibility and hope. Marina also makes a list of repairs and maintenance tasks that need to be done around the lighthouse and cottage. Winter has been hard on the buildings. There are loose shingles to replace, paint that needs touching up, a window that doesn't close quite right. But these are satisfying problems, the kind that can be solved with time and effort. Marina looks forward to working with her hands again, to physical labor in the warm sun rather than the bitter cold. As she works on her lists, Marina hears a scratching sound at the door. She looks up, puzzled, then walks over and opens it. A cat sits on the doorstep, a gray tabby with white paws and green eyes. It looks up at Marina and meows. "Well, hello," Marina says softly. "Where did you come from?" The cat meows again and walks into the cottage as though it owns the place. It heads straight for the fire and settles down on the rug, curling into a ball. Marina laughs. "I guess you're staying then?" She knows there are several feral cat colonies on the peninsula, descendants of barn cats from farms that no longer exist. This one must have decided the lighthouse keeper's cottage looked like a good place to spend the remainder of the winter. Marina gets out a bowl and pours some milk into it, setting it down near the cat. The cat raises its head, sniffs the milk, then laps at it delicately. When it's finished, it cleans its face with one paw, then settles back down to sleep. "You're very sure of yourself," Marina tells the cat, but she doesn't mind the company. In fact, she's pleased. The cottage feels even cozier with a cat curled up by the fire. That evening, Marina shares her dinner with her new companion, pieces of cooked fish that the cat accepts gratefully. After dinner, when Marina settles in her armchair to read, the cat jumps up into her lap and begins to purr. The sound is wonderfully soothing, a low rumbling vibration that Marina can feel through her whole body. She strokes the cat's soft fur and feels something in her heart expand. She hadn't realized she was lonely, but apparently some part of her was waiting for exactly this warm companionship on a cold night. "I suppose you'll need a name," Marina says to the cat. She thinks for a moment. "How about Storm, since you arrived during the thaw after the winter storms?" The cat purrs louder, which Marina takes as agreement. That night, Storm sleeps at the foot of Marina's bed, a warm weight on the quilts. Marina finds the presence comforting. She's lived alone for so long, and she's been content with it, but having another living creature in the cottage makes it feel more like a home. Spring's first whispers. As winter slowly releases its grip, Marina's days take on a new quality. She and Storm develop a routine. The cat accompanies her on her trips to the lighthouse, trotting along behind her on the path. Storm seems to understand that the lighthouse is important, that Marina's work there matters. Sometimes Storm catches mice in the lighthouse basement, leaving them as gifts for Marina. She's learned to thank the cat while discreetly disposing of the offerings. It's the thought that counts, after all. The melting snow reveals the garden beds, and Marina begins to prepare them for spring planting. The soil is still too cold and wet to work properly, but she can clear away dead plants from last year, spread compost, and plan where everything will go. Storm supervises the garden work, lounging in patches of sunlight that appear between clouds. The cat seems to enjoy being outside, chasing the occasional insect or bird, though Marina notices Storm never catches any birds. The cat seems content to just watch them. One morning, Marina wakes to a new sound, birds singing. Not the harsh cries of gulls, but something else, something sweeter. She gets up and looks out the window to see small songbirds flitting among the bushes near the cottage. Spring is truly coming. Over the next few weeks, the changes accelerate. The days grow longer and warmer, The last of the snow melts away completely. Green shoots begin to push up through the soil in the garden. Bulbs that Marina planted last fall now finally emerging. Marina orders her seeds and supplies from the mainland, and Tom brings them out on his boat. He's delighted to meet Storm, who graciously allows the old fisherman to scratch behind his ears. "A lighthouse keeper should have a cat," Tom says approvingly. "They're good company, and they keep the mice away." Marina agrees wholeheartedly. She spends more and more time outside now, working in the garden, cleaning up the winter debris, repairing the damage from the storms. Her skin begins to tan from the sun, and her muscles grow stronger from the physical work. Storm follows her everywhere, always nearby but never underfoot. In the evenings, they sit together by the fire, Marina reading or knitting, Storm purring in her lap or on the rug nearby. Marina realizes she's happier than she's been in a long time. Not that she was unhappy before, but there's something about the companionship, the changing season, the sense of renewal that makes everything feel more vibrant, more alive. One warm afternoon, Marina takes a break from her garden work to walk down to the shore. The tidipools are full of life now. Tiny crabs scuttling among the rocks, small fish darting through the clear water, anemones waving their tentacles in the current. She sits on her favorite rock, the one worn smooth by countless waves, and watches the sea. Storm sits beside her, and together they observe the world around them. Marina thinks about the winter that's passed, about all the quiet days and long nights, about the storms weathered and the challenges met. She thinks about the letters she wrote and the sea glass hanging she made. She thinks about the sweater she knitted and the bread she baked. Every season has its gifts, she realizes. Winter brings quiet and introspection, time to turn inward and work on projects, time to rest and renew. Spring brings growth and possibility, new life emerging from the cold earth. And through it all, the lighthouse keeps watch. Through every season, every storm, every peaceful night, it stands tall and sends its light out across the water. Just as Marina tends to it faithfully, through winter's cold and spring's renewal, through all the changing seasons of her life, the waves roll in, constant and eternal. Storm purrs beside her. The sun shines warm on her face, and Marina knows with deep certainty that she is exactly where she's meant to be. The lighthouse keeper tends her light. The seasons turn. Life continues its eternal dance. And all is well. All is well.